Hello, you're watching Wednesday edition of News Mongolia. Today is August 10th. For our top stories, Ik River Hydroelectric Power Plant project may resume. Sakura Gear Museum exhibit on the history of captive Japanese soldiers. Misuse of livestock drugs is creating more resistant viruses. For other news, stay tuned. The Ik River Hydroelectric Power Plant project in Botlam Province has been on hiatus due to environmental complaints submitted to UNESCO by the Russian government. An environmental impact survey has been carried out and it was concluded that the power plant would have no effect on Russian river basins. If the World Heritage Committee approves the assessment, the project could resume. Construction of the plant started in 2016, funded by a $1 billion soft loan from the Chinese government. When construction began, the Russian government submitted a complaint to the UNESCO World Heritage Center, concerned that the hydroelectric power plant could affect part of the Siling River Basin in Russian territory and the Baikal Lake Basin. In recent years, the Mongolian Academy of Sciences and state-owned Ik Hydroelectric Power Plant Company conducted an environmental survey and concluded that the plant would not harm any river basins in Russia. A French company has also been carrying out a biological impact assessment. Now the team is preparing to submit research results to UNESCO, which will be discussed by the World Heritage Committee.
UNESCO instructed us to conduct an environmental survey. The survey is being conducted by a qualified international company. Today, the survey is at 85% completion. According to the contract, the assessment will be finished in October. At that time, we will send the assessment results to Russia and UNESCO for further discussions during the 46th session of the World Heritage Committee.
Experts say that if the World Heritage Committee approves the survey results, the Ik Hydroelectric Power Plant project can be recommenced. Today, 17% of Mongolia's energy is produced by renewable energy sources, with 1.7% supplied by hydroelectric power. At full capacity, the Ik River Hydroelectric Power Plant can produce 606 million kilowatts per hour. The plant could produce $50 million of energy annually, replacing imported energy. The plant is expected to create 150 permanent jobs and 3,000 temporary ones. On the occasion of the 50th anniversary of Japan and Mongolia's diplomatic relations, the Sakura Gear Museum opened with an exhibit on the history of Japanese prisoners of war who participated in major architectural projects in Ulaanbaatar. The museum opened at Nagonor Park, which was established on the site of a renovated landfill in 2011. In 1945, Japanese prisoners of war worked here to prepare stones for buildings and roads. Japanese Ambassador Hiroyuki Kobayashi attended the museum's opening ceremony.
This year marks the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Mongolia and Japan. The museum showcases the historical ties between the two countries. We hope the museum will deliver the message of peace not only to Japanese and Mongolian visitors, but also to international visitors.
A 98-year-old war veteran also attended the opening ceremony. He was a soldier in charge of the Japanese prisoners.
Our mission was to oversee the captive soldiers under special rules. They didn't cause any problem, but they seemed to have a hard time being captive.
The stones prepared by the Japanese prisoners of war were used to construct significant historical sites, such as Sakura Square and the State Academic Drama Theatre.
We know Sakura Square and some of the prominent buildings around it, but we don't know much about who built it and its behind-the-scenes stories. The Gear Museum displays this history in a quick and simple manner.
The exhibit consists of around 50 archival photos, which showcases the times of the 1940s. The photos are on loan from the General Authority for Archives. Veterinarians warn that the misuse of drugs administered to livestock is creating more resistant viruses. As the excessive use of drugs can also affect the quality of meat, herders are strongly advised to administer livestock medications correctly. Many herders give too much or too little medication to their livestock, which makes them ineffective. Even a single injection can make a virus more resistant to a drug. If antibiotics are administered to an animal, their meat and milk should not be consumed for several days due to the drug's residue.
First, herders have to get advice from vets. Then they must use the drug in the prescribed amount for the suggested period.
Antibiotics in meat can have side effects on the human body in the long run. Research suggests that it can make people more susceptible to infectious diseases. Viruses that become resistant to drugs can be contracted by eating meat. Herders are strongly advised to use drugs correctly for the safety of their livestock and public health.
The use of drugs is unavoidable. They are necessary for fighting diseases. What matters is their correct use. Correct use means accurately identifying the disease, considering the type of animal, choosing the right drugs, and using them in the right amount, according to the vet's advice.
Mongolians herd 5 types of livestock: sheep, goats, cattle, camels, and horses. There are over 100 livestock diseases documented in old medical texts. In modern times, drugs are essential for combating disease. Experts say that to get the most out of drugs administered to protect livestock and people, the proper use of medication is vital. Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Thank you for staying with us on MNB World. Now let's take a look at Mongolia's current affairs.
On August 8, 2022, the region near Seoul, South Korea was hit by the heaviest rains that we have not seen in the last 80 years, raising the level of readiness of rescue organizations to serious. In this regard, the Embassy of Mongolia in South Korea issued a warning to Mongolian citizens and providing them with vital information. In their statement, 7 people have died and 6 people are still missing due to the danger of flooding because of the heavy rain that fell on the evening of August 8, 2022 in the central regions of South Korea, including Seoul and Jeonji. In connection with the emergency situation, the Disaster Prevention Center of the country has raised the level of readiness of rescue organizations to serious. As there is a risk of inundation of buildings and structures due to continuous rain in the central region, there is a risk of disruption to road traffic and public transport and landslides, so please to alert and prevent possible floods. There are more than 42,000 Mongolian citizens in South Korea and there are more than 10,000 illegal immigrants according to an official survey. There are citizens in the country are aware of the potential danger of floods and can turn to the embassy in case they are in the need of urgent help. On August 9th, the Ministry of Education announced that the highly criticized lottery system for kindergarten enrollment would no longer be used. The lottery policy began in 2015 due to insufficient capacity for kindergarten enrollment. This year, the Ministry of Education hopes to expand kindergarten capacity through different approaches. The state is collaborating with private kindergartens, expanding the rooms of existing public kindergartens, and using the first floor of buildings as daycare centers. There are currently around 300,000 kindergarten-age children in Mongolia. Ministry of Education in Hamadan said around 34,000 of these children have been unable to enroll in past year. The ministry hopes to provide 77% of these children with kindergarten enrollment by September 1st. And the remaining 33% will be enrolled before the end of the year. Children aged from 3 to 5 are on the priority enrollment list.
Here comes the international news from our partner agencies. One person has been killed after blast rocked a military base in Crimea, the head of the Russia-appointed regional administration there said.
The head of the Russia-appointed regional administration, Sergei Aksyonov, wrote on social media that the blast had taken place at the Saki military base near Novofedorivka on the peninsula's western coast. Footage circulating on social media appeared to show multiple explosions. Russia's defense ministry later said ammunition was detonated, but this has not been independently verified. The ministry said there was no fire impact on the ammunition storage area, Russia's state-run RIA news agency reports. The Ukrainian peninsula that Moscow annexed in 2014 is a popular destination with Russian tourists, and one video appeared to show visitors fleeing from a beach as smoke rose in the background. Local witnesses told the Reuters agency that they heard at least 12 blasts, beginning at about 15:20 local time. After arriving in the area, Mr. Aksyonov said a 5-kilometer no-go zone around the blast site had been established. I am in Novofedorivka at the scene. It is too early to talk about the reasons for what happened. The investigative commission will find everything out. In this case, firstly, the measures were taken to secure the perimeter, setting up roadblocks with patrol cars with a 5-kilometer radius to rule out injuries among the locals. The emergency ministry is monitoring potential fires. The fragments are spread around. Behind me is a military airfield. Everybody is here, there are not enough ambulances and so on. It's too early to talk about victims, and for now no civilians requested help from our medical facilities. All information will be published on my social network pages as it comes. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky devoted his nightly video address to Crimea, but did not directly mention the explosions. The war began with Crimea and must end with Crimea with its liberation, he said, suggesting that he believes Ukraine must retake the peninsula before the war can end. Novofedorivka and Saki are about 50 kilometers north of the port of Sevastopol, home of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, which has been leading a blockade of the Ukrainian coastline.
President Joe Biden formally welcomed Finland and Sweden joining the NATO alliance Tuesday as he signed their instruments of ratification that delivered the U.S. its formal backing of the Nordic nations entering the Mutual Defense Pact, part of a reshaping of the European security posture after Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
The US became the 23rd ally to approve NATO membership for the two countries. Biden said he spoke with the heads of both nations before signing the ratification and urged the remaining NATO members to finish their own ratification process as quickly as possible. The Senate last week approved the two once non-allied nations joining the alliance in a rare 95-1 vote that Biden said showed the world that the United States of America can still do big things with a sense of political unity. The country sought out NATO membership early this year to guarantee their security in the wake of Russian President Vladimir Putin's offensive in Ukraine. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization's rules require the consent of all of its 30 existing members before Finland and Sweden can officially accede into the alliance, which is expected in the coming months.
Together, we committed that the United States, Finland, and Sweden would continue to remain vigilant against any threats to our shared security and deter any confrontation and confront any aggression or threat of aggression that might come up. And I urge the remaining allies to complete their own ratification progress as quickly as possible.
The candidates of the two prosperous Northern European nations have won ratifications from more than half of the NATO members nations in the roughly 3 months since their two applied. It marks one of the speediest expansions of the Pact of Mutual Defense among the United States and the democratic allies in Europe in its 73 years history. US state and defense officials consider the two countries net security providers, strengthening NATO's defense posture in the Baltics in particular. Finland is expected to exceed NATO's 2% gross domestic product defense spending target in 2022, and Sweden has committed to meet the 2% goal. Sweden and Finland applied to join NATO in May, setting aside their long-standing stance for military non-alignment. It was a major shift of security arrangements for the two countries after neighboring Russia launched its war on Ukraine in late February. Biden encouraged their joining and welcomed the two countries' government heads to the White House in May, standing side by side with them in a display of US backing. The US and its European allies have rallied with newfound partnership in the face of Putin's military invasion, as well as the Russian leaders' sweeping statements this year condemning NATO, issuing veiled reminders of Russia's nuclear arsenal, and asserting Russia's historical claims of territory of many of its neighbors.
Now let's take a look at our regular feature on sports. The fifth edition of the Islamic Solidarity Games opened in the Turkish city of Konya on Tuesday, with the country's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in attendance for the opening ceremony.
The Islamic Solidarity Games opened in Konya on Tuesday, although medals have already been won in several sports. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Tuesday inaugurated the 5th Islamic Solidarity Games in the country's central Konya province. The Games will run through August 18th with the participation of more than 4,000 athletes from 56 countries. The event was moved from 2021 to 2022 to avoid a clash with the delayed Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. And also Konya 2021 has kept that branding. Speaking at the opening ceremony, Hüseyin Brahim Taha, Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, thanked Turkey for hosting the event. Taha said it is important that Islamic countries hold such events which strengthen intercultural dialogue. Saudi Arabia Sports Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Turki Al Faisal, who is also serving as the head of the Union of Arab National Olympic Committees, thanked Erdogan and the Turkish people for holding this sports event. For his part, Turkish Youth and Sports Minister Mehmet Muharrem Kasapoglu said Konya will host a sports festival. Kasapoglu added international sports activities contribute to the development of brotherhood between countries. Meanwhile, on the sidelines of the event, Erdogan held talks with his visiting Azerbaijani counterpart Ilham Aliyev.
3 players from the Saudi-backed Live Golf Series have lost a court bid against the PGA Tour to play in the FedEx Cup playoffs.
The PGA Tour has suspended members for taking part in the Breakaway Series. Australian Matt Jones and Americans Taylor Gooch and Hudson Swafford sought a temporary restraining order, clearing them to play at the first FedEx Cup playoffs tournament this week. However, U.S. District Judge Beth Lapson Freeman sided with the PGA Tour. The trio claimed the suspension was causing them irreparable harm, but the judge in her ruling said the lucrative payments offered the LIV are based upon players' calculations of what they were leaving behind. The 3 are among 11 players, including Phil Mickelson and Ian Poulter, contesting their suspension with an antitrust lawsuit against the PGA Tour. However, only Jones, Gooch and Swafford had been seeking the restraining order to allow them to take part in the FedEx Cup playoffs. The $75 million free tournament event starts in Memphis on Thursday. Earlier, world number 1 Scottie Scheffler had spoken of his frustration at seeing the players suing the PGA Tour. Reports in Australia have claimed Open champion Cameron Smith and Australian compatriot Mark Leishman will be among these players joining LIV Golf in the near future. Smith would not be drawn on the matter when asked Tuesday. Scheffler, though, has ruled out being among their number, despite the $25 million purse on the offer of its event, saying it was never his dream to chase financial benefits.
Here comes the weather forecast for the world's major cities. This is it for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow with more news updates. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.